Along with individual experts, Surgeon Masters brings you life improvement strategies in 10 minutes. These proven principles and strategies are easy to learn and can be applied immediately, allowing you to practice your best. Here's your host, Jeff Smith.
Welcome, everybody, to the Surgeon Masters mini podcast. I have with me Dr. Alan Reznik, a orthopedic surgeon and educator at Yale and Quinnipiac for many years. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. So good to speak to you again.
Yep, we have awesome, great conversations when we bump into each other at various annual meetings and often do that with fine food and beverages. But I want to share some of our great conversations with our audience. How's that sound for today?
That sounds great. I'm glad you reminded me about the great food. I think we've had some of the best meals ever together with a lot of good laughs. That always gets the ground going. But the thing I enjoy most is when we get together and we talk about some of the things that we're both passionate about. And that's like how we deal with the challenges of being where we are with a position of responsibility and dealing with the people around us that work with us in a way that's positive and helpful to them and us. So that's, it's always great to talk about that.
Absolutely. So tell me again and tell our audience, how do you look at it when the people that you're working around, the employees or team, let's hear some of that wisdom that you've gained over your career.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things, but I think for the short content we have, I want just to talk about a little bit of an idea about how to look at two different types of employees and then kind of look at yourself a little bit. And then, a little quick thought about it, how do you figure this out for yourself and for your employees as well? And the two employees that I like to talk about, and anyone who has employees working for them can relate to this. You'll have one employee called employee A, for example, comes in, settles into the office, happy to have the job, puts their nose to the grindstone, brings in photos from home, awards, knickknacks, has a drawer full of snacks, and starts to do social things with everyone in the office, and incredibly loyal and looks to make you happy. And they seem happy to stay put and do the job. They're there. They've kind of made a home out of it. They'll even, go out with everyone and maybe be the organizer of all the office parties outside the office. They're very, very into it and very loyal. And that's all great. And then you have the other employee comes in and does a good job, qualified, efficient, brings few personal items into the office, does everything you ask, and, maybe not as involved with everyone in the office and maybe not as settled into the chair. The indent in their chair is not so deep is one way to look at it. And then revises their resume every year and looks for other jobs or promotions every year. Almost annually, just kind of takes a look at themselves and makes a critical decision. And then at the end of the year, makes an active choice whether they want to stay and work for you more or go somewhere else and take another opportunity. There's all kinds of employees in between. It's not the perfect A and B dichotomy, one or the other. There's all types. And the question I always like to ask people, and take a pause and get your thoughts too, is which employee would you prefer? And why would that be that employee, the best employee for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to have the mix, but sounds to me like you might want a few more employee A's.
Yeah, a lot of people think that, and it is great to have an employee A, but the argument would be made by some business school gurus and maybe myself a little bit, is as much as I love to cling on to employee A because it makes me feel warm and fuzzy and I don't have to worry if I'm coming in next morning if the employee is going to be gone, there is some real value to understanding why employee B might be preferred.
Interesting. So share a little more about these two types.
So, employee A might have a little bit of nervousness under the hood. Employee A ultimately might worry if you're firing them. They're so settled in, if you fire them, it might disrupt their whole life. And so there might be a little bit of maybe over-pleasing you and maybe being more cautious about how they do things and maybe not bringing new things to the fray because they don't want to rock the boat. And employee B doesn't worry if you fire them because they understand who they are and what they're good for. And at the end of the day, if employee B chooses to stay every single year in, year out, it's because you've created the environment that employee B has actively decided is the best place for them to be. And so employee B really challenges the employer to be a good place to work, to be, in fact, probably the best choice for that person at that given time. At the end of the day, if you're an employer, you really want some employees that are employee B that choose to stay year in and year out because it's a real acid test of your ability to keep good employees. It's an asset test for you to be engaged with the people who work for you, and it's an asset test for what you actually provide as a work environment. So at the end of the day, if you're really deep down under the hood, everyone loves an employee A, but if you keep the employee Bs, you're doing something really right. because both the A's and B's will be happy.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So I think if you see a lot of people quitting for various reasons that seem dubious, you got to wonder, am I not competitive for salary? Am I not giving them any opportunity to grow? Am I not listening to them in a way that they feel a productive part of the team? There are people going to leave for change. They got married, they had to move, their parents are ill. There's all those things you have to discount that. But it's nice when someone chooses to stay actively.
Absolutely. Most of us don't like to be described as an employee, but there are a lot of surgeons getting into employed positions. So, and even if we're not the employed, can we flip this around a little bit on ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the reality is we probably should. We probably don't. Most of us don't. I probably don't do it. I'm kind of settled in. I'm probably, I've been in practice a long time. It's hard for me to be employee B at this point, and I do think about that a lot. As an employed physician, do you worry if you're going to be fired, or the health plan is going to change some rules on you and do something that make work more difficult? And you're going to end up accepting it. And you haven't looked at your CV as a professional or even tried to improve your CV at all. I love the story. Like, I once read a book, and it was great. It was all about understanding yourself, but really what it was putting yourself as president of your own company. He said, imagine you're the president of Jeff Smith Incorporated, and Jeff Smith Incorporated has some assets, and Jeff Smith can invest in those assets or not invest in those assets. They can go rusty. And at the end of the day, what is Jeff Smith going to do? Is he going to, does he advertise himself? Does he put a new coat of paint on every once in a while? Does he get new tires for the car? Does he add a skill set going forward? And company would, but Jeff Smith might not. An employee B is probably doing that all the time, checking their CV, works on their CV all the time. And a physician in an environment that's bad for them maybe brushes up their CV and looks at it and says, well, maybe I should do something else, or maybe I can change something in my environment. And it doesn't necessarily accept a poor work environment. And then they're not afraid to take a new job. And I think it's hard to do that as a physician.
It can be, yeah. But you're saying sort of reflecting on those gives you the opportunity to sort of notice what you might change or shift, or maybe you just want to stay employee A, or you want to stay employee B, or maybe you want to flip or make some adjustments in one of those.
Yeah, and I think we all have to have a little employee B in this current environment, because our asset is our skill set. That's basically, we document that on our CV. So I think to pull out your CV every once in a while and look at it and see where you are, see what things, this is a great thing, is like, what things would you like to have on your CV by next year that's not on there that maybe would make you feel good? My own personal story is that I got my MBA before I was 40, or was turning 40. And I just asked myself this crazy question. It was really simple. A friend of mine said, I'm thinking about getting my MBA part-time. Do you want to do it with me? And I said, oh my God, I never even thought of that. There's a local program I could sign up. We could do it together. And I said to myself, I said, I'm going to have my 40th birthday with or without my MBA. If I look back and I turn 40 and I don't have it, will I regret that? And then the answer came back 1,000% yes.
Interesting.
So 1,000% yes, because it's like, hell yeah, I will regret that. And I will feel a ton better about myself if I go ahead and get this degree. And then I had to figure out how to do it between trauma call and everything else, which was a little nutty, but worked it all out and did it. Mainly because my wife drives. But that's another story. My wife likes driving. So I used to do all my work taking the kids up skiing. Is 3 hours up, 3 hours back. And I did all the work for the MBA in the car the whole way and didn't get car sick. But there is impediments for us to be, employee B as physicians these days. And that makes it hard.
What would be your sort of take-home message or couple thoughts of next steps of summarizing our conversation from today?
Just a quick look around the people who work around you, and you can recognize the employee A, the employee B's pretty quickly. You can probably see things that might make someone an ace not leave, but not really be great. And it may be worth thinking about those things and trying to figure it out for yourself, so that even if they're not a B, you maybe make them a B indirectly by some of your own actions. And then look at yourself, and say, okay, what are the things that make me an A or a B? And are there things I can do to make me a little more, and something I struggle with all the time, make secure within yourself, right? If you're a little more B, you don't worry about the environment as much, you'll be okay. That's a hard thing to find for some people. They get into the thing, they got their routine, and then they're in that rut, and then they're afraid to go out of the rut, and they're afraid to be pushed out of the rut. And then you live in a little bit of underlying fear all the time, and that's probably not the best.
Great message. Great opportunity for our listeners. Thanks for being our guest.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff.
There you have it. In less than 10 minutes, this is Jeff Smith along with Dr. Alan Reznik. Until the next episode of Life Improvement Strategies for the Surgeon Who Wants More. Ciao.
Now, take 10 minutes and put your plan into action. to practice your best.